The first time I told my sister I wanted to start my own business, she actually choked on her drink. You? She coughed, dabbing at her blouse with a napkin. Start a business? What, like an Etsy shop for your little candles or whatever? Everyone at the dinner table laughed, especially Mom. Dad gave me that familiar side glance, the one that said, don't embarrass the family again. I swallowed my pride, kept my eyes on my plate, and just smiled. I wasn't surprised. That's how it always went. My sister Camille was the career one, the rising star with a flashy job at a tech company downtown and a LinkedIn bio full of buzzwords. Me, I was the artsy one, the experimenter, the one who'd find her path eventually. But what they didn't know was that I had already started. I just wasn't ready to show it. Not yet. My business wasn't glamorous, but it was real. I made handmade soy candles, custom scents, personalized packaging, and local sourcing. I turned the garage into a workspace and spent every weekend and evening pouring, labeling, shipping, and researching. I had a small but growing customer base on Instagram, and my first 5-star reviews had just rolled in. It wasn't a hobby, it was a start. But if I had told them that, they would have rolled their eyes. Especially Camille. She thrived on being the best. Her validation came from outshining everyone else. And me quietly doing something on my own, that was a threat she didn't take seriously. Yet. So I stayed quiet and I kept building, one candle at a time. The night Camille found my business Instagram page, I wasn't even the one who showed her. It was my cousin Lexi who stumbled on it and shouted across the room, "Hey, is this you? These candles are cute." Camille grabbed the phone before I could answer. "Oh my God," she laughed. "You really went through with it?" Then she read the bio aloud, mocking my slogan, "Hand-poured light for your darkest days." She chuckled like it was a bad joke. "Well, if this flops, at least you can say you tried," she said. That line stung more than I wanted to admit. The whole room laughed again. I laughed too, just to survive it, but deep down something snapped in me. I wasn't angry, I wasn't embarrassed, I was ready. She thought this was just a phase, a little sister chasing another dead-end dream. But I'd already made a promise to myself. I would not stop until this business proved her wrong. The turning point came 3 months later. I got an email from a subscription box company that wanted to feature my candles in their wellness edition. It was the break I'd been praying for. I spent every hour outside my day job fulfilling the largest order I'd ever had. I hand-poured 500 candles, customized every label, and even wrote a thank you card for each box. When the reviews came in, they were glowing. Orders tripled. My site crashed from traffic. I had to bring in help. 2 part-time assistants, both women I'd met through a local startup meetup. For the first time, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Legitimate. This wasn't just survival anymore. This was momentum. Camille didn't know yet, but her days of mocking me were numbered. Then one day I heard a name during a podcast interview. The guest, a CEO, mentioned a struggling department in his company, the very tech company where Camille worked. Their product team is a mess, he said. Outsourcing might be our next move. I paused the audio. My mind started racing. I looked up the company's name, searched the division, read job listings. That's when I saw it. Camille's department. And suddenly, I knew exactly what I needed to do next. I spent the next 2 weeks doing something I never thought I'd do. Researching Camille's company like my life depended on it. I wasn't just being nosy, I was being strategic. I looked up their investors, their leadership team, recent press releases, employee reviews, and every department that was struggling with product packaging and branding. And it hit me like a wave. They weren't just floundering, they were bleeding money on inefficient vendors and outdated product presentation. That was my opening. Camille worked in product experience and packaging, and the company had just announced they'd start contracting out select operations to independent creative agencies. That was the moment I stopped seeing my candle brand as a side hustle. I started forming a full creative house around it. Branding, product design, copywriting, and packaging. I wasn't just selling candles anymore. I was building a brand studio. I used the profits from my latest drop to rebrand completely. I changed the business name from Wick Plus Soul to Soul Bright Studio, a name that could sit comfortably next to any agency on a client deck. I hired 2 freelancers to help with branding mockups and created a clean, corporate facing website. I even rented a small co working space downtown, got a business phone line, and invested in a lawyer to register as an LLC. It felt surreal, watching this idea morph into something bigger than me. I'd gone from hand pouring candles in my garage to pitching creative solutions to 6-figure companies, and I hadn't even started advertising yet. I didn't need to. My plan was specific: get in through the back door. Hers. The company posted a request for proposals, RFP, online, looking for creative agencies to pitch a full rebrand for a wellness product line Camille's team had been managing and failing with. I submitted my deck anonymously, no name, no photos, just work. Sleek, smart, and 10 steps ahead of what I knew they were used to. It took 2 weeks before I got the call. Hi, this is Naomi from GenCorp Innovations. We were impressed with your proposal and would like to move forward with your agency for a 90-day trial partnership. I almost dropped my phone. Naomi sent the contract to my official studio email. I signed it and returned it within the hour. Then I looked at the email footer and saw the CC, camille.g@gencorp.com. She didn't know who I was, but I knew exactly who she was. The onboarding Zoom was surreal. Camille had her camera off, as usual. I kept mine off too. Naomi introduced the team and Camille spoke first. Let's hope this agency actually delivers. We've had too many delays already. That voice, that tone, that same dismissiveness that used to cut me at dinner tables now made me smirk. I was about to deliver more than she could imagine, but not just for the contract. For every laugh she ever stole from me. My team and I hit the ground running. In the first month, we completely redesigned their packaging strategy, streamlined vendor communication, and delivered ahead of schedule. The company CEO responded to our first round of mock-ups with, "This is the best creative I've seen in 2 years." Camille still didn't know, but she was about to find out. The CEO scheduled a quarterly review call to announce which departments were getting permanent outsourced partners. We were on the list. He wanted to introduce us officially. On camera, I got the calendar invite. Camille was one of the panelists. So I did what I hadn't done in a long time. I turned my camera on. The meeting room lit up with little video boxes as executives and team leads joined the call. I adjusted my camera, sat up straight, and smiled. Not too wide, not too smug, just calm, professional. Camille's screen popped up second to last. At first, her camera stayed off. I wasn't surprised. She liked to stay invisible during high-level meetings unless there was a compliment to chase. But then the CEO, Mr. Levine, said, "Before we begin, I'd like to introduce the agency that's exceeded expectations on the wellness line rebrand. Everyone, please welcome the team behind Soul Bright Studio." He gestured to me through the screen. Melanie Thomas, lead strategist and founder, is here with us. I watched Camille's camera flick on instantly, and for a full 5 seconds, she just stared. Her face twitched in confusion, eyes narrowed, then widened. I gave a polite nod. "Good to see you again, Camille." She opened her mouth, then quickly muted herself, pretending to cough. Naomi, the project lead, kept talking, totally unaware of the bombshell that had just dropped on Camille's perfectly curated corporate world. I stayed calm, but inside, I was on fire. Not with rage, with relief. Years of mockery, belittling, and eye rolls, all erased in one reveal. Camille stayed quiet for the rest of the call. I led the presentation flawlessly, walked the execs through the next phase of the rollout, and fielded questions like a seasoned pro. I had built myself for this moment, not just for the comeback, but for the credibility. After the call ended, my inbox pinged a direct message from her. "Camille G. Melanie, is this some kind of joke?" I stared at it, laughed a little, then typed back, "No joke, just business." She even replied. But she didn't have to, because now she knew the business she mocked, the one she joked about in front of our entire family, was now running her department. And I wasn't done yet. That was just phase one. The contract extended into next quarter, and word had already spread within the company. Another division reached out for creative support. A third asked for a consultation. Camille was no longer the golden girl at work. She was now part of a team that reported up to me. Every success I delivered made her look smaller. Not because I wanted to humiliate her, but because she had spent years trying to make me invisible. Now I was shining in the one space she thought she owned. Weeks passed. Camille tried to act like it didn't bother her. She sent polite, clipped emails, showed up to meetings with fake smiles. But I could tell her tone had shifted. She was careful now, respectful. Like she'd realized something important. You never know who's building while you're mocking. Then came the company retreat. They invited my team to speak on a panel live, in person. I hadn't seen Camille face to face since the candle joke at her promotion dinner. Now she would sit in the front row while I shared my journey from small business owner to creative agency founder. I arrived early, got mic'd up, took a deep breath backstage, and when I stepped out, she was already seated, watching, waiting. And this time, she didn't laugh. The lights were bright, but I could see her clearly. Camille, sitting in the second row, legs crossed, hands folded too tightly in her lap. She had that look on her face, the one she wore when someone else was getting attention she didn't approve of. But this wasn't the family dinner table. This was a corporate retreat, and I was the keynote speaker. They introduced me with words like innovator, rising brand strategist, and partner in our highest performing campaign of the year. The applause filled the room as I walked onto the stage. For the first time in my life, I wasn't standing in Camille's shadow. I started my speech the way I'd practiced, calm and clear. A year ago, I was pouring candles in my garage. No investors, no audience, just a dream and a handful of orders on Instagram. I paused. A few chuckles rippled through the audience. And now, I'm standing here because this company believed in the vision I spent years quietly building. I didn't look at Camille when I said that, but I felt her eyes on me, watching, processing. I told my story without bitterness, without pointing fingers. I didn't need to. The facts spoke for themselves. When I wrapped up, the crowd stood and clapped. Executives came over to shake my hand. Someone even asked if I did one-on-one mentorships. My assistant handed out cards while I walked down the side of the stage. And that's when Camille stood up and stepped in front of me. We were face to face now. No screens, no keyboards, no interruptions. "Melanie," she said, her voice low. "That was impressive." I tilted my head. "Thanks. I'm glad you think so." She hesitated. "I didn't realize you were doing all this. I mean, I thought it was just a hobby." "You thought wrong," I said gently, "but it's okay. You weren't supposed to see it. I wasn't building it for you." She looked down. For the first time, I saw a crack in her polished image. "I know I haven't always been supportive. She stopped herself. "No, I've been awful, and I'm sorry." I didn't rush to forgive her. I just let the silence hang. "Do you hate me?" she asked suddenly. That made me pause. "No," I said. "I don't hate you. I just stopped trying to impress you." Camille nodded slowly. "You didn't just prove me wrong. You outgrew me." That hit harder than she probably meant it to, because it was true. I wasn't trying to beat her anymore. I was on my own path, and she was just one of many people who had to eat their words while watching me walk past. She started to walk away, but then turned back. "Can I ask one thing?" I raised an eyebrow. "Did you pitch the project knowing I worked here?" I smiled. "Let's just say I didn't let that stop me." She nodded, almost laughed, then walked. Later that evening, I got an email from her. You didn't just win, you built something I never had the courage to. I see that now. For the first time, I believed her. And for the first time, I didn't need her approval. I had built something real. And this time, the applause wasn't for her, it was for me. 2 weeks later, Camille sent out the company-wide email for next quarter's product rollout. Normally, she'd just CC the contractors and give orders, but this time the tone was different. It was more formal, almost cautious. I scrolled past the usual company jargon and then saw it. Special thanks to our new permanent creative partner, Soul Bright Studio, led by Melanie Thomas, for delivering a full branding transformation under pressure. We look forward to more collaborations. I read it again, not because I didn't believe it, but because I needed to feel it. For years, Camille made it a point to erase me, ignore my efforts, or downplay my wins. And now, she was required to say my name with respect in front of her entire company. The same name she once dragged across family dinners and group chats. The same name she laughed at when she saw it under a candle label. She didn't just say my name, she acknowledged my leadership, my vision, my value. I didn't even need to respond. The win was baked right into the signature line. But that same day, I walked into the co-working space I had been renting and noticed something new. The staff had placed my business card on their featured members wall. Right beside it was a handwritten note from the owner. Inspiring work, Melanie. You didn't just grow your business, you elevated all of us. It hit me hard. I wasn't chasing validation anymore. I was collecting proof of my impact. Everything Camille once used to mock me, my creativity, my quiet approach, my little business, was now the very thing creating jobs, empowering women, and opening doors I didn't even know existed a year ago. Still, some things were hard to forget. The night of her promotion party replayed in my head often. The way she raised her glass, grinned across the table, and said, "Some of us are built for success, and some of us are just built to watch." I remembered how I forced a smile that night while gripping the edge of my plate so tight my fingers ached. But now she wasn't toasting to herself anymore. She was sending invoices to me. Camille's energy shifted too. She'd started copying me on internal requests with phrases like, "Melanie can advise," or "Let's loop in Soulbright for creative direction." At one point, Naomi even said, "We should ask Melanie before we move on this. She's got better insight than anyone here." Camille nodded without hesitation. No passive-aggressive comments, no tension, just agreement. That was when I realized something powerful. My work had silenced her louder than any argument ever could. Later that week, I was invited to sit in on a leadership roundtable hosted by Gencorp's senior partners. They wanted insight from external creatives driving internal innovation. I was the only non-employee at the table. Everyone wore suits. I showed up in a minimalist black dress, my company logo pinned on my collar. Camille sat across from me. She didn't glare. She didn't avoid eye contact. She introduced me to her colleague with pride in her voice. "This is Melanie Thomas," she said. "She's the founder of Soulbright. You'll want her on anything involving product experience." I didn't smile. I just nodded. It's because there are moments where silence says more than words ever could. And in that moment, I didn't need to say anything at all. She had to say my name. 3 months after that roundtable, I got a group text from my mom. "Family dinner this Sunday. Everyone's coming. Bring something sweet." I stared at the message for a minute. We hadn't had a full family dinner since Camille's promotion night. The night she humiliated me in front of everyone. I wasn't sure I wanted to go. But part of me felt like this was a test. Not from them, from me. Was I still that same quiet girl gripping her plate while everyone laughed? Or was I ready to walk in with my shoulders high, knowing I'd already won? I stopped by a boutique bakery and picked up 24 cupcakes, hand-frosted gold foil wrappers, and a tiny edible logo of Soul Bright Studio on top of each one. Petty? Maybe. But symbolic? Absolutely. I arrived a little late. The house was buzzing with conversation and clinking cutlery. Mom smiled when she saw me. "Mel, you look amazing, baby." Dad gave me one of his awkward but approving nods. Camille, she was already seated at the far end of the table. She looked up and froze. Her eyes dropped straight to the box in my hands, then back to me. I walked over, placed the cupcakes gently in the center of the table, and said, "Brought something sweet." Camille cleared her throat. "Those look professional." "They are," I replied with a small smile. "From a client of mine, we just finished a full packaging rebrand for them." "Oh," she said, "cool." It was the quietest I'd ever heard her at a family event. Dinner began and the usual chatter filled the room, updates about jobs, vacations, kids. At one point, Uncle Ray turned to me. "Heard you're doing big things with your business. Saw an article floating around LinkedIn, something about a wellness brand partnership." I nodded. "Yeah, that's us. We're scaling faster than I expected." Mom chimed in. "Camille said you're working with her company now. She said your team's been incredible." My fork paused midair. Camille glanced up and nodded, her voice calm. "Yeah, Melanie's work speaks for itself." Everyone turned to me surprised. I didn't glow. I didn't say anything dramatic. I just said, "Thanks, it's been a long road." And then I kept eating. But inside, my 16-year-old self, the one who used to cry after being called a failure, stood up and cheered. After dinner, as people started heading out, Camille came over while I was packing up my things. She looked tired, but not angry, just real. "You did it," she said quietly. "You actually did it. I didn't think you would." I shrugged. "You didn't have to." She hesitated. "You're not going to forget what I said back then, are you?" I looked her in the eyes. "No, but I'm not carrying it anymore." She nodded. "Fair." Before she walked off, she reached into her purse and pulled out a checkbook. "By the way," she said with a small smile, "next month's retainer, I'm the one processing it now. I'll make sure your signature clears fast." I laughed, not because it was funny, but because this was the full circle moment I never knew I needed. The same sister who once called me a failure was now writing me checks. 3 months after that family dinner, I stood in front of a sleek glass building downtown, the kind with clean lines, tall windows, and polished metal handles that glinted in the sun. My reflection stared back at me from the front door, hair pulled back, Soul Bright pin on my lapel. The folder in my hands held the final lease agreement. This wasn't just an office space, it was the space. An entire floor dedicated to Soul Bright Studio, fully mine, fully funded, fully earned. I took a deep breath, walked inside, and rode the elevator to the top. The leasing agent met me in the hallway. "You sure you want to sign for the whole floor?" she asked, almost cautiously. "It's a big jump." I smiled. "I've made bigger." I signed the lease right there at the window, overlooking the skyline. I didn't even realize I was crying until one of the drops hit the paper. Not sad tears, not even happy tears. Just full circle tears. The girl they once pitied now owned a business that needed 20 desks and still couldn't keep up with demand. That evening, I hosted a private launch dinner in the new space. Just close friends, my team, and a few clients. The lighting was warm, music low, and the room filled with laughter. No one in that room saw me as Camille's little sister. They saw me as the CEO, the one who built something when no one believed in her. But the real surprise came just as dessert was being served. Camille walked in. She wasn't on the invite list, but one of my team members let her up. She wore a soft gray dress, heels that didn't scream for attention, and for once, no phone in her hand, just a small ribbon-wrapped box. She waited until the crowd thinned, then walked over and handed it to me. "What's this?" I asked. She shrugged. "Just a small congratulations. I saw it and thought of you." Inside was a custom glass plaque. Etched on it in bold script were the words, "Built from silence, seen by all." I stared at it for a long second. It wasn't just a gift, it was acknowledgement. She didn't owe me anything, but she gave it anyway. For once, without ego. "This is thoughtful," I said carefully. Camille smiled. "It's about time I gave credit where it's due." I raised an eyebrow. "You sure it doesn't hurt to say that out loud?" She smirked. "Oh, it kills me. But I figured if I can process your checks, I can process your success too." We both laughed. Real unforced laughter. Later, as the evening wrapped up, she pulled me aside once more. "I used to be terrified of not being the most impressive one in the room," she admitted. "But watching you build all this, it made me realize something." "What's up, Nick?" "It's sometimes the loudest person is just covering up the most fear." I didn't say anything, I just hugged her. Not because everything was perfect between us, but because healing isn't always loud. Sometimes it shows up quietly with a plaque, a smile, and a sister finally willing to stand beside you. 6 months after opening the new office, we were invited to speak at a national small business summit. Soulbright Studio was listed as one of the top 10 fastest growing female-owned agencies in the country. My name was printed on everything from the banners to the programs to the speaker stage. And this time when they announced me, the crowd didn't clap out of curiosity. They clapped because they knew me, because they'd followed the story. The girl who was once mocked for pouring candles in her garage was now mentoring brands worth millions. Camille flew in to attend the event, not as my +1 or to tag along for clout. She came as a quiet guest, sitting in the audience like everyone else. I spotted her as I stepped on stage. No flashy dress, no dramatic entrance, just a woman watching her sister own a space she once mocked. When the moderator introduced me, he added, "Her journey is proof that the person everyone overlooks may one day be the one writing the checks, leading the calls, and calling the shots." I took the mic, cleared my throat, and began with the same line I'd practiced. "I used to think silence was weakness. Now I know it's where strength is born." After the panel, Camille waited for me backstage. She looked different these days. Softer, slower to speak, quicker to listen. "You were incredible," she said, handing me a bottle of water. "The way you spoke, it was like you weren't just talking to the room. You were talking to every version of yourself that had to fight to get here." I nodded. I guess I was. We sat on the steps behind the stage, just the two of us, no audience, no spotlight. And for the first time, she said something I never expected. "I used to be scared of you, not because of what you had, but because of what you were willing to build without anyone's approval." That silenced me, not because I didn't believe her, but because hearing it out loud made all the pieces. "Why didn't you just support me?" I asked softly. She looked down, because if you succeeded without needing me, it meant I wasn't necessary. And I didn't know who I was without being better. The honesty stung, but it healed too. There's something powerful about watching someone finally tell the truth, not just to you, but to themselves. Later that week, our parents hosted another dinner. This time, there were no digs, no comments about real jobs or finding direction. Mom had printed an article from a business magazine that featured Soulbright. It sat in a plastic frame on the living room shelf. Dad poured me a glass of wine and asked if I was hiring again. Camille handed out the dessert, smiling as she told everyone, "Melanie's team just closed another national deal. She's running things now." And nobody laughed, because now they knew. I wasn't the dreamer anymore. I was the doer, the boss, the name behind the paycheck. And I wasn't in Camille's shadow anymore. I had become my own light. It was the biggest night of my career, the Women in Brand Leadership Awards, a red carpet event for the top creative minds in marketing, design, and entrepreneurship. I had been nominated for Entrepreneur of the Year, and when I first got the email, I stared at it for almost 10 minutes in disbelief. My name, Melanie Thomas, was printed alongside CEOs, authors, and brand legends I'd studied for years. The theme was quiet power, and that felt fitting. I hadn't climbed here by shouting. I'd built, listened, endured, and grown. Camille offered to come as my guest. Only if you're okay with it, she'd said carefully. I paused. Old wounds don't just vanish, but they do stop bleeding. Sure, I told her, you can come. We arrived together, both of us in black, simple and elegant. Paparazzi lights flashed, but this time I didn't shrink. I smiled with full confidence, hand in hand with the truth. I belonged here. Camille walked a few steps behind me on the carpet, not out of shame, out of respect. She knew this was my night. During the ceremony, my heart raced with each announcement. The host paused at the final award, drawing suspense. This year's Entrepreneur of the Year is a woman who turns silence into strategy, betrayal into business, and small beginnings into nationwide influence. Then she said my name, Melanie Thomas. I stood slowly as the crowd erupted in applause. I could feel Camille clapping too, loud and proud. The walk to the stage felt slow, like time had paused to give me one last flashback. Those late nights in the garage, my sister's laughs, the bank account sitting on zero, my fingers burned from candle wax, all of it. Worth it. I took the mic and looked out at the sea of faces. There was a time, I began, when I thought I needed everyone's approval before I could succeed. I waited for permission to chase my dream. I waited for applause. Then one day I stopped waiting and I started building. I glanced down at Camille for just a second. Her eyes were glassy, her hands still together in her lap. I want to thank everyone who believed in me and even the ones who didn't, because it turns out doubt can be just as powerful as support when you know what to do with it. I stepped off the stage to hugs, photos, and congratulations. Camille met me at the edge of the crowd. I'm proud of you, she said, hugging me tightly. Not because you won, but because you didn't let my doubt stop you. I whispered back, your doubt pushed me harder than your praise ever could. We both smiled. The next day, news of the award was everywhere. My inbox flooded, book deal offers, speaking invites, corporate partnerships. But what stuck with me most wasn't a contract. It was a message from Camille. You taught me that power doesn't have to be loud to change lives. You were never a failure. You were just silent and powerful. I stared at that message for a long time because after everything, even she finally understood who I really was. It was a quiet Sunday morning when I walked into the Soulbright studio office alone. The team had the day off and the city outside was still half asleep. I liked it this way, peaceful, no meetings, no schedules. Just the hum of the lights and the sound of my own footsteps echoing across polished floors. I walked over to the wall of frames, press features, award photos, the first check I ever received. And in the center was a photo I'd recently added. It wasn't a magazine cover or a milestone sale. It was a simple shot from the awards gala. Camille, standing in the crowd, eyes full of pride as I held my trophy on stage. Not long ago, that same woman had called me a failure in front of our entire family. She had laughed at my candles, trashed my business ideas, and made sure I felt small every time I dared to dream out loud. But today, Camille was the one recommending Soulbright to her peers. She forwarded clients. She sent thank you emails. She even gave me a referral that led to a multi-million-dollar contract with the wellness brand she once tried and failed to win over herself. The circle wasn't just complete, it was flourishing. A few weeks later, Camille and I sat together at a local women's business brunch. We weren't just sisters now, we were collaborators. Friends even. She spoke about the value of quiet creators. I spoke about building a brand from pain, and when we were both done, a young woman came up and asked for a photo. Your story, she said, made me believe I can start something without anyone's approval. On the drive home, Camille turned to me and asked, "Do you ever wish things had gone differently?" I thought about it, about all the hurt, the silence, the long nights in the garage while she was out celebrating promotions, about the bitter dinners, the cold texts, the email where she once mocked my candle site like it was a joke. And then I thought about where we were now, who I had become. I wouldn't change a thing, I said, because without that version of you, I don't know if I'd have ever found this version of me. She didn't say anything at first, just nodded. "I was scared of your growth," she finally admitted, because it meant I had to look at how little I'd grown inside. It was the kind of truth that doesn't need a response. Later that month, our mom hosted a family barbecue. No speeches, no awkwardness, just laughter and music and the clinking of glasses under string lights. As everyone started settling down to eat, Camille stood up, tapped her glass gently, and said, "Before we dig in, I just want to say something." My stomach twisted a little, reflex memory, but then she smiled. "Some of you remember a time when I thought Melanie was just trying things, failing forward, dabbling. What I didn't see was that she was building an empire while I was busy looking for validation." She turned to me. "Today, I work with the woman I used to laugh at, and I've never been more honored to say, she's not behind me anymore, she's beside me." The family clapped, I smiled, and for once it wasn't out of survival. It was because I finally believed it too. Not just the success, but the healing. Because true power isn't just about winning. It's about rising without hate and showing the world that even when they laugh at your light, you could still outshine them all.